So we are good to go. Yes, sir. We're live.
Okay, just give me 1 second. So, let's start. So, to all participants here, good morning, good evening, uh, depending on wherever you are around the world. And so, I wanted to, how we're going to do is we're going to talk about digital twins, B meaning Paul. And once Paul is done, we're going to have some question and answers. To introduce Paul, Paul and I know each other. I think the people who joined early have sort of figured that one out already for a long time. But just to introduce Paul, he is a registered architect and one of the most well-known figures in the AEC space as a thought leader, as a researcher, author, educator, analyst, strategist, and as integrator of process technology and business. So Paul graduated cum laude from the New York Institute of Technology and also graduated from the Career Discovery Program at Harvard University's GSD. And the latest is he's the founder and CEO of the Digit Group. So, and I can go on, but in the interest of time, I'll let Paul start with the session. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Roy, and I apologize for my computer screen switching over to my email. Isn't that interesting? Man, you know, this age of COVID, amazing things have transformed out of this. And one of those is sometimes computer screens happen to pop up. Like I was just talking with Roy about this idea of Teams. And when you're on a conference like this, if you have to go to your next meeting and it's Zoom, I don't know if it's happened to you, but my goodness, it's like, you know, gremlins take over. So again, apologize for all of that. My name's Paul Doherty. I am a recovering architect. I'm in a 12-step program from that, but that's, I am the founder and chairman of an organization called the Digit Group, or TDG. We are a real estate development group. And proud to say now at risk. In other words, everything we design and construct, we actually do own and then operate. We're known for innovation in urban environments, sometimes called smart cities. And why that's important in the context of this particular presentation is that our cities, our urban environments are human-centric. So they're designed for an individual human, but more importantly, it's data-driven. And I think that is a great way of starting to introduce, how Roy and the TechnoStruct team have provided me a platform here to talk about this term digital twins. Not a big fan of the term, but it is now commonplace. It's more of a verb or a large dumping ground for a lot of different ways that people are approaching technologies in order to better communicate between the different stakeholders. So although I may not like the term, I love the concept because it's one thing that I think is going to be the glue that ties together many things, including the next level of where we're seeing this world moving to as an owner. So let me give you just a little bit more background for those of you who don't know. We have been involved with some pretty high profile projects, which I will show as case studies of our use of digital twin and metaverses. We do the design, as a conceptual master planner, and then we hire groups, architects, urban planners, engineers, and of course the constructors to actually deliver and pull up out of the ground these wonderful urban environments. It also means that we need to drill down sometimes into very specific areas like housing, transportation, lately the world of healthcare and wellness, technology, energy, and of course media. And what we come out with is a very unusual product that is meant to inspire. We are not here to build the rest of the world. We are here to showcase what's the art of the possible in order to have others take a look at what we're doing and potentially build on that so that we can, deliver something that I think in our world, the world of design and construction and the built environment, I think we need to be a little easier on ourselves. If it's one thing that COVID has taught us, it's that we were in a very, very busy environment BC before COVID, right? Get the work done, not enough people. Oh my God, it was a crazy time. Good for business. But what wasn't good for was strategy and taking a breath and realizing why are we doing certain things. So that's why, we are taking an approach now with every one of our projects, with our consultants, with our partners, is that we have to ask, are we doing the right thing? And I think that that type of moral and ethical way of looking back at what you do every day is really a silver lining that's come out of this global pandemic. And for those of you on the call that have been affected by this, just my sympathies. This was a real deal and on global in nature. And I think that as we start to move forward as a industry, as a community, that I hope that these types of events can help provide a bit of a pathway. With that in mind, there's this term digital twin. So we've been involved with the visualization world for a very long time, even before we became real estate developers. About 22 years ago, we were involved with an organization that was looking to raise up the bar of how we communicate design intent. And we took some folks that were working in industrial light and magic, but had an architectural education, and started with 3D visualizations in a very, very high level of detail. And we were very successful with it. We never thought of the term digital twin, but we quickly realized that having fly-throughs, having photorealism of still images were okay. But when we attached data to it, like let's say for like a kiosk at a sales pavilion for a housing developer, it was very interesting to watch how the data would surprise people because it was in the conduit of a three-dimensional object, and there was delight. So that's where we started to take a look at digital twins in a much different way than just, how do we capture enough of the data and enough of the design intent to replicate what's in reality. So, our definition is that wherever there's a footprint, there should be a cloud print. And that's a catchphrase that we use to help when we're onboarding our teams to deliver these mega projects around the world. And it seems to resonate when people then can either, hold up, a mobile phone and be able to interact with this digital world and have an effect on it. Right. So the digital meeting the reality is really a wonderful space right now that is maturing from the standpoint of discipline, standards. There are consortium that are coming together, learning from other industries for our industry, and it's a glorious time. I know a few of you on this webinar have been involved with this and are doing the heavy lifting right now, and I congratulate you. Please continue working in a very, very disciplined way because the industry's watching where the physicality of a footprint becoming that cloud print. We are in uncharted territory in certain cases because of the way that that data is either handled, used, and most importantly, how is it secured? In other words, can we trust the data? And I think that's where the worlds of digital twin really have a very long runway, is about this building of trust between the data world, the digital world, and the physical world. And that comes down to a lot of you on this call, where we are in the role right now of creating the digital DNA of the built environment, right? Which means that we have a real responsibility where we can start the process like what the Digital Twin Consortium is working towards, which is the descriptive nature and the prescriptive specifications of best practice, right? And what we've been very lucky to have been involved again in the visualization world 22 years ago. Now moving forward into the real estate development, we're now even moving beyond just the visualization of what a digital twin does or just the data. We are actually challenging a lot of our consultants, our architects or engineers, to take a look at some baseline products and baseline tools like building information modeling to move beyond the visual quality of how we try to communicate our design intent. We are pushing for multimedia. I cannot believe that we've waited this long to incorporate sound into our building information models. How come Revit has not dealt with any of the senses when your job as, like, let's say, an architect is to design for humans? We just don't design for the eyeballs. We design for sound, taste, touch, smell. Why don't we have smell as part of the design criteria? Smell is one of the most amazing senses that can literally hit memory banks and bring you back to when you were a kid. Why aren't we designing for smell? Right. And so this is where the world of digital twins needs to get beyond itself and stop thinking that, just because I have Revit and I use Rhino and I can do a twisty building, that's architecture. Stop with the twisty buildings. That's the limitation of your control over the software. Let's start thinking about the total immersion of what makes up a digital twin as being part of those five senses. And let's start designing properly, because right now we're failing the world. And our job is one of the four noble causes that keep us alive as human species. And the four of them are clean air, fresh water, safe food, and shelter. So for everyone that's listening on this webinar, you have a noble cause. You have a responsibility to help shelter the human race. And that is where the world of digital twins becomes even more paramount, more important, because we can start to create measures based upon real products, real production, and then how does that interface with virtual production and virtual products? So another challenge that we have beyond, challenging our designers to design for all five senses is this world of being able to create an inspiring environment in the digital world that can affect the aesthetic design of the physical world. So beyond just using the other industries of our world, things like manufacturing, and benchmarking against that and saying, hey, our industry can do this. We can take certain lessons from there, but we are an industry unto ourselves that is so different, and our products need to be, well, rethought. How about reimagined? Because what may work in the physical world, when you actually then use it as a virtual product or a virtual experience in the digital world, it may not come across as well. So these are the challenges of the design aesthetic, of starting now this way of a push and pull in order to create a better built environment physically and a better digital environment virtually. So this is where we are having a ball, discussing design, discussing what is it that we want our technology to do for us. There's a lot of talk where the digital twin can actually drive things, and in certain cases they can. I'll show you some examples of that on real world projects. But I think that the greatest legacy that we can leave is a healthy, accurate, and authentic digital experience. And that's where I think all of us that deal with BIM, that deal with these initial tools that are, again, building the digital DNA of the physical built environment, we're in a really, really great space right now, because there are no rules yet. Right. In other words, we haven't, standardized our way into a corner that we just can't get out of. So this is our time. And what we are finding is that when we are looking at other industries, there are certain things that can be transposed. and that can transpire into processes that we could use. I just mentioned, one of them being the world of manufacturing. And there are so many great graphics and playbooks and how work gets done in so many different industries, from aerospace to pharmaceuticals to you name it, that I think it behooves all of us to at least look at things that we can take into our world, such as the world of how you go from physical to the digital world. It's about the act of creation, right? Using BIM to start the process of communicating design intent, being able to communicate that and then aggregate it into the digital world and start the analysis to provide that insight so that we can now start this circle of continuous learning and continuous improvement. I think the number one thing that I've learned of talking with people in other industries about this idea of when we start to use data and we trust it and it's authentic and we know that it's quote unquote the truth, at that point, we have to, all of us have to protect that at all costs. We're going to talk a little bit about blockchain later on in this webinar. And I think that it's going to be tools and processes and algorithms like that. And blockchain is not the only way, but it is one of the ways of how we start to authenticate and then make those either piece of data or blocks of data immutable, so that then we can not have to worry about it, trust it, and now let's move on. Because what we do as an industry is so vast, and we deal with so many people in our supply chain, both of materials, of labor, of just experience, that we are going to have to rely more and more on these digital tools because we're not getting enough of the younger generation interested in even getting involved with what we do. So we have a huge challenge. It's not just laborers out in the marketplace globally that we are just fighting over right now because we don't have enough workers. Yesterday's announcement by the Biden administration of a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. This is great news. It's about a decade late, but I'm glad that the government of the United States is catching up now to our infrastructure needs. But for all of those that are U.S. based right now or work in the U.S., if you have employees, you better be doubling down to keep them, because right now there is a talent glut, and we're going to need digital twins in order to move forward quickly into just keeping up now with the vast amount of work that is literally just at the threshold. Once this passes Congress, which will be expedited in the next few weeks, the gloves come off. And I know that we are not prepared as an industry for this tsunami to happen. So that means that we need to be looking at automative processes and then tools in order to move forward with this vast amount of work that is literally coming at us like a lightning bolt. Another area to also benchmark is Hollywood in its work with special effects and its now current use of digital twins. They've actually leveled up even beyond just creating like stage sets, like what they're doing at Disney Plus with the Star Wars franchise, specifically The Mandalorian, the hit TV show, where they are moving away from green screen technology and actually using digital twins to create these stage sets in these environments that are like one big, large monitor, right? Where they can project in an immersive way the planet of Tatooine, or you go from that desert planet out into outer space onto some sort of starship like this. It's done quickly because you're immersed inside the environment, even with the lighting, so that you don't have to go into post-production for every little stupid thing that happens. So it's saving time, it's saving money. And I think Hollywood can show us a lot about how to use digital twins as an immersive way of creating amazing mixed reality experiences. And this is one example. This is from our partners over in China. They are known as Digitwin. And what's cool about Digitwin, let me just turn up some of the sound here and actually keep both of these going. They are working right now with an organization called Netflix with a hit TV show that they have called Stranger Things. And what's cool about, okay, and let me just make sure that these move forward. There we go. What's cool about this particular use of digital twins is that they wanted to move the TV show off your big screen TV. So for next season's episodes of Stranger Things, there's going to be an app that you can pull down for Netflix, and then built within the app is a way for your phone, like let's say it's an iPhone 12 or above, for LiDAR that's built into your phone to start to take all the different areas around your room that you're sitting in. So it understands where the windows are, the doors are, and where the ceiling and floors are. So what happens is there's going to be a certain QR code that hits during the episode, and you actually watch with the phone in front of you the episode. But then what happens is when the monsters come from the upside down, they're going to come off the screen and actually then envelop your entire room. So, Hollywood's using the digital twins to break out from the constraints of a monitor or a large screen TV and start the process again of that mixed reality. And now I would challenge all designers, how would you then use this technology for creating space when there is infinite space in cyberspace? So those are just a quick example of what's happening now. But what I'm really focused in on is how the world of gaming is affecting not only the experiences of an entire generation, but how we can learn from a design aspect and a delivery aspect of, again, that integration of the real world and the virtual world, where I have a 10-year-old son, right? And he used a gateway drug called Minecraft that moved to roadblocks. Then now he's a Fortnite addict, right? And it is a gateway drug. And this idea of Fortnite as an environment really started to take hold during this pandemic, because especially in the beginning, kids were not allowed to socialize as often as they did prior to COVID, right? And they felt like, well, let's have experiences up online so they could take out, their Xbox and meet up with their friends from across the street or within their virtual classroom and actually go on adventures together and discover things and fight and make up and have this entire, social world be something that is, well, yeah, of course we do Fortnite. And when they see each other, like when things start to open up, and, thank the Lord, we have opening up very quickly here in the US, where the kids are able to get together again and play on their bikes and everything. But guess what? They also now make Fortnite part of their overall experience. They still go out and play soccer out in the field, and they go out and they still jump on the trampoline and do all those kid things. But Fortnite seems to be the thing where they can continue to play and learn and all of those things. So we have a lot to learn about how the experiences of these types of environments need now to be fast forward into our world. This is where the world of digital twins really do have, again, a long runway, because we have a lot to learn for benchmarking ourselves against things like gaming and Hollywood and manufacturing. And how can you, and I'm challenging each one of you individually, how can you start to learn from that so that we can create a better built environment physically? So with that, we also have a very interesting role to play, especially with the designers, on this webinar, where a lot of digital twins are contingent on static data, meaning that most of the built environment, our buildings don't move. Okay. So that's cool. And there's a lot of effort and a lot of energy being put into not only the description of digital twins in our industry, but the actual use. And a lot of times, we're now taking a look at this of, well, where do we actually place our buildings once we have them delivered to us to communicate design intent so that we can construct and deliver our buildings? That's step one. Step two, though, is where can we put this building so that it has relevance, it has context. It's not just floating on a screen, right? And that's where the world of cesium and other types of globe models, Google Earth being another one, where you can actually pinpoint to where this particular digital asset is, where it mimics physically where it is on planet Earth through a latitude and longitude. Now that gets interesting, because now that you've placed either that piece of infrastructure or that capital asset, that digital asset, somewhere now that can be geolocated in the physical world, now you're creating a dynamic. and the dynamic nature of the static data, which hopefully is very accurate because I know no one does BIM wash. Yeah, right. Our our building information models have to be even more perfect, more exactly where content is in place. I'm going to show you why in smart contracts that's really important. So this idea of having the static information now, it can now collide in a good way with dynamic data, people movement, vehicle movement, drone movement, all of these different dynamics of how the static digital twin meets the real world and in context of where it geospatially is somewhere on planet Earth provides a whole new way of rethinking how do we start to have a relationship with our data? Do we trust it? Or how about we don't trust it and we just stay away from it? This embracing of understanding that we trust it because we put it in place, it is authentic. There's that pride of ownership, and that's where we need to go as an industry. So when you're talking about digital twins, think about the accuracy of what you do every day, and do you trust yourself? Because when it's put into that dynamic environment, my goodness, it can either be a train wreck or something very inspirational, which leads us to how we start to take a look at when we get our delivery of things like Revit models and different types of digital assets that make up and represent our physical building. There is that functional piece, and like I mentioned before, this particular webinar is not about what right mouse click to use inside of Bentley products or inside of the world of Graphisoft or Autodesk products. That's what they do, and there's a lot of energy behind that. And quite frankly, some of the right mouse click stuff and pull down screens and all these tips and tricks should be done more in a workshop type of environment. So that's where that sits when we start to talk about the functional nature of that. That almost becomes something that we measure our consultants, our architects, our designers, our urban planners, our engineers to start to take a different type of measure as to their professional competence. In other words, I don't want to know about the functional stuff. I'm expecting you as a professional to understand your tools, right? So that's why we think more on the strategic end of things about what happens when those assets start to mature and we start to receive them as an owner. Well, what we're looking at now is the ability to start taking the initial authoring tools, like BIM and things like that, to start to receive them not in its native format. Of course, we want that particular building information model delivered because it's part of a contractual process, but our usability of it strategically is that we're requiring every one of those assets to be delivered in some form of a gaming environment with things like physics involved, so that you're not in a bouncy house. There's actual physics when you deliver those building information models to us. It's geospatial, right? It's somewhere on the planet Earth. It's anchored to some sort of latitude and longitude, because what that does is it provides us a way, a glue, to then take another model from a different architect, and I can now start to attach them together. So like, let's say one architect is using Autodesk products, another's using Bentley products. I can have those two things communicate because I can tie it together with the gaming engine. This is really important to understand because now I start to create what's called a metaverse. And by combining different authoring tools deliverables with a federated way of connecting those things together, we are now getting closer and closer to creating a digital equivalent of what's happening in the real world. So a federated metaverse is really where we're seeing the world going. So much so that we are now also looking at these from a functional aspect and strategic as part of our project controls. Being able to use, all the different acronyms people use, 4D, 5D, 6D, 10D, 12D, whatever. Bottom line is project controls, right? We want to control things like the budget on the financials, and of course the schedule, right? And I can now better understand when I can federate things in context rather than looking at individual drill downs of a Primavera scheduling document for one project and then another, and then it's up to me and the people to sort of weave it together. When it's digital, when you have a true digital twin, we can have them start to communicate together through our gaming engine technologies that allow us to do beautiful things, which means that we can have the conversation of a true experience of walking down a street, not just in front of your building and then the other consultant's building, but of this federated, what we like to call an omniverse. And this is where I think we're just scratching the surface of what the art of the possible is when you do that. Again, it's beyond just the visualization. How can we now start to take into account an end user's experience, a person walking down the street and hearing that echo because of the materials and because of the closeness of the buildings, or not? Maybe we don't want that type of experience. So again, it's raising the level of a designer to a point where we're not finding a lot of good designers. Quite frankly, isn't that shocking, right? I think many of us know that there are very good designers that just design in 2D, right? But when they get to the job site, they're shocked at how it looks in 3D. It's like, wow. So if anything, digital twins are going to start weeding out or forcing certain designers to improve their skill sets. And that's one outcome I'd really like to see from this entire movement, of digital twins. You can see here that we use a technology called Vim. It's a technology that can use on the shelf type of gaming engines like Unreal, one of our preferred products, Unity, that's out there. Vim also uses its own gaming engine to help us federate all of these types of experiences beyond the visualization. So again, I'd encourage you to go out and take a look at how this glue can start to separate you from your competition as well. Another thing that we're finding in this entire space that is gaining a lot more steam than it initially did before COVID, BC, is this idea of design for manufacturing and assembly, sometimes known as industrialized construction. Other people call it prefabrication, modular construction, offsite construction. There's a lot of terms for this big bucket, almost as many as digital twins. But the reason I wanted to show this and why the digital twin becomes an important element is based on an article that came out about us 2 days ago. So Forbes published our bin to fabrication factory that we had in China before it was seized by the Communist Party and is now a state-owned enterprise. So yes, that does happen. We're right up there with Qualcomm and Cisco and a bunch of other people in China that have had our IP taken away. And that's why we're fighting. Not anything. It's business is business. Love the Chinese people. Actually enjoy working with their government. It's just that when they took our factory away, that kind of sucked. But what we were doing was using SolidWorks to create our digital twins. And they had a different purpose from a functional aspect than just describing how we would like this particular building to perform. And here's the prescriptive specifications. We were driving CNC machines. Now, these machines, as you'll see here, were custom made, and our factory was success. The big measure was how can our software, our digital twins, start to drive all of these machines? Because the way that we were working was with a technology called structural insulated panels, or SIPs, which means that they're a composite of different types of materials that are compressed together to create both a structural element and also really good, actually great things like, fire ratings, that type of thing. We had a 10-hour rating on the average for our standard panels. Just to give that into context for those of you that don't get involved with that part of the industry, probably the highest level is 1-hour ratings, right, for fireproofed hallways and exits and things like that. So we had 10-hour, just to give you an idea about the superior quality that if you do it right, how this idea of offsite construction can really work. The reason why I mentioned SolidWorks is that we could not get the same horsepower out of Revit, and we wanted to, but it just wasn't there. I'm still not seeing it. I know there's a lot of active people working on it. I hope it comes out sooner rather than later. But the idea is that we needed to have a technology that was literally like building a watch, because I'm certain people, when you're out on a job site, it's kind of like horseshoes, right? Or hand grenades. As long as you're close, it's okay, because I was always told you're not building a watch, you're building a building. Guess what? We're now building a watch, because every piece of data that's inside of that model has to be perfect, because it's driving machines that have a tolerance level of a millimeter, right? So when we're actually putting our panels flat on its side, and our CNC machines are going ahead and routing out fenestrations like windows, doors, conduit for mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and cabling for IT, you have to be perfect, because it's going to come out. And if there's imperfections, well, this is what DFMA shows you. You better be a better designer, because the spaces that we're creating need to be delightful. They need to be inspiring, and you can't have a mistake. So this is why, the world of digital twins is going to, again, upskill us in order to be better designers and better technicians of owning our data. This isn't data just to, tell Mr. Contractor how to build something. You're driving literally the digital DNA of the built environment. And this is something that I hope that you take to heart, that message, because DFMA is not going away anytime soon. If anything, it's increasing as a deliverable, percentage-wise, in the overall amount of deliverables we have out, in the marketplace. I am not one of those people that thinks that we're going to have a world that creates volumetric, which is what you see here, full-blown, built buildings through an easy button. That's not going to happen. But we will find nesting inside of every one of our projects, where components of the built environment will be delivered in some sort of off-site construction DFMA methodology. So we need to pay attention with our digital twins that they better be perfect, because you may not know where it's being used, where we're building a watch. So with that, this also drives other things that are being driven by the market, either through a lack of talent, in the workplace, and the increased speed of certain types of technologies that seem to have a life of their own. One of those is robotics, and we are seeing some wonderful leapfrogging, generational leapfrogging of the use of robotics in the field. Everything from like little what look like those robotic vacuum cleaners that are now putting onto flat surfaces where the interior walls are to be built, right? And that's all done through instead of people going out there with tape measures and chalk. It's being done by this little robot. I think we've all seen Spot, through Boston Dynamics, go out and do some remarkable things with punch list items and whatnot. Say 1 second as I turn down the sound on this thing. So I show this particular next generation of quote unquote Spot through Boston Dynamics only because we're now starting to see the mimicry of how these robots can move to such a point where the humanoid type of aspects, we can feel like, wow, we can actually put these things in the field because they look like men. They look like, well, humans. They look like that they can do remarkable things. So why don't we start the process of maybe putting these guys out in the field that can work in those nested environments where certain things are automated, but then what are you doing with your digital twin? What is going to be the idea? And here comes Spot. What becomes the idea that your building information model is the thing that's driving these? Right, your specification just isn't about I want an interior wall with this amount of thickness, with this type of gypsum board, with this type of paint, this color paint. Specifications are changing because what happens when we can actually then say we know that this crew is going to be out in the field and we want it built this way. We're talking about creating a sheet of music. You guys are now in the composition business. You're no longer in the digital twin business, because how robots operate inside of a building information model in order to build the built environment. Now all of a sudden digital twins become an indispensable way of becoming the conductor of a symphony. This becomes that next big great step. And if you don't think that this is happening, take a look at what Hensel Phelps is doing. Take a look at what all these organizations, they're learning, and they're learning quick. And the faster that you learn quick, the sooner it becomes just part of every day. So let's get into some use cases for the next 20 minutes or so, and then I'll turn it over to Roy, and you can bombard me with a ton of questions, I'm sure. Um, a project that I'd like to at least briefly show you, I can't show you the entire thing through, but I can show you some things, is this fascinating project called NEOM. I was on the initial team that wrote portions of the Vision 2030 plan for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We were working with McKinsey and Company and Boston Consulting on that particular project. What came out of it was this new country. It's not a city, it's a new country called Neom. It's in the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia, and it's being designed in such a way that it's just fascinating. It's about fantasy meeting reality. What I'm going to show you is a prepared little storyline about what we delivered for Neom, which is their healthcare system using digital twins. So let me just turn down the music here again. So the punchline here is that we want people to come here. There are no people that live here. There are certain nomads that are out in the desert, but this place is, there is no people. There's no towns, no cities. So everything's from scratch, meaning that we have to have immigrants come in, right? And this wants to be the United States type of model where they accept everyone. Socioeconomic class, what religion, what culture you're from, to create NEOM. And this idea of creating a digital twin is right there at the beginning, where the digital twin in NEOM's case is not just where the buildings are. We were asked to take a look at the hub and spoke model of how most healthcare systems are operating around the world. And it usually starts with a general hospital, and then you have a bunch of other hospitals that surround it, smaller clinics and stuff like that. We took a different approach. We said, what would happen if we made the patient the hub, and you have medical services that surround it? And they took off with it. And the cool thing about it is that they now have an app called Dr. Neom that sits on their mobile phone, and a myriad of services, including self-help, including measuring for wellness. How well are you taking care of yourself, from diet, from exercise, all these things? The person becomes the hub, and all the digital services that are managed by the digital twin is what makes this a unique experience. So again, thinking beyond the usage of the digital models that we're all creating, and that is the world of digital twins. Look what NEOM is exploring. It is not that, it's about how to make humans more human, and how do we start to increase the knowledge of how to take care of oneself, and when things get out of hand, how then the system can start to assist you. So this is a higher calling. And I think that, looking at NEOM was one great way of looking at this in a different way. Our Qingdao, China International Virtual Reality Industrial Park is really pushing the envelope, again, of typical definitions of digital twins. This is the world's first virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality theme park and production center. And when I say production center, this is kind of like a large industrial park. We already have 11 customers that are starting to work there. This is coming up out of the ground as we meet today. It is backed by both the Chinese and American governments to bring the next level of the virtual world, the metaverses, the omniverses, to reality to help people, be it like through surgery, healthcare, training, that type of thing, financial tech, fintech, other industries that would, including the manufacturers of the world, that could use this particular development to either see how things are really pushing the envelope, or take and learn from what we've done so that you can better improve your workplace, your supply chains, all those things. I like the theme park, though, because it is one of these areas where Qingdao is. It's very close to South Korea and Japan. It's equidistant to both Beijing and Shanghai, and it's an environment that loves this type of technology. Both the immersive, meaning goggles, both the augmented, meaning that it's you can use just like something that you don't have to wear. It's an augmented experience, but the mixed reality is what really fascinates me, where we are taking the approach where we are using our digital twins to not just build out this environment, but it's challenging us to simulate what is going to happen in real life. And that's another use of digital twins, the simulation piece that I would highly recommend that everyone explore. Because when you have an environment and it's geospatially perfect and your data is authentic and as pure and truthful as you can, well, you now have a playground before the actual theme park in this case is built. So that started a lot of thinking on our end to say, well, we need to do these digital twins because we have to build, well, this, I mean, this is real life. This is our plot. Here's our initial site plan. This looks very familiar to people in the built environment. But when we start then to really start to take into account how people move through the space and what's the experience, and we can actually get into it either immersive, augmented, or mixed to better the design, well, that started us thinking in some really unique ways beyond the adjacencies. What would happen if we could then take each one of these assets, put it into federated metaverse, and then launch the theme park 2 years before we actually deliver the physical theme park, and we make it revenue generating? Huh. You're looking at the first virtual reality theme park. We're going to be publishing this up online in December of 2022. Our estimates is that we'll have a little over 1 million people a month. That's lowball estimates going into our virtual environment, our digital twin, with transactions, real transactions. This is really working, right? People are going to be experiencing everything like our friends at Epic Games that we're talking with about having a live version of Fortnite Island in one-to-one scale when you go here physically. But in the virtual sense, let's hook up. Let's make that a different type of experience. Instead of just flying into Fortnite Island, how about flying into the Qingdao Virtual Reality theme park, right? And you sell it as a skin through V-Bucks. Now, all of a sudden, things get interesting, right? What was also interesting to us was we were able to make enough revenues in our pro forma projections that we cut down our construction loan by 13%. Let me say that again. To build this particular theme park, it's approximately a $1.2 billion budget, okay? We're saving 13% that we don't have to borrow because we're opening up 2 years earlier up online with our digital twin. Now we're starting to really open up eyes of the financial world as to why digital twins are really important, because they're increasing the amount of revenues earlier than a traditional construction schedule. So now start to think about the projects you're working on and how a digital twin, if you opened it up online, could it be the new room inside of a Zoom call, right? Because your office is being built, but you want to meet in your office. Well, you can do that. I'll show you an example at the end about how that looks. So this really opened up our eyes in unique ways, about the theme park and also our incubators. This idea of research and development for all industries and how we're going to be doing things differently. We also have new building types that we can start to simulate and test through digital twins. This one is the Crystal Bridges Museum Collection. Crystal Bridges is owned by the family of Walmart. It is the largest concentration of art that we're taking into e-art to experience it in 3 dimensions, be inside of an Ansel painting or photograph. So these are the new worlds that I think that need to be explored. And we're all the pioneers here. Just the fact that you're listening to this webinar, you are a pioneer. The idea of e-travel, right now there's a lot of people that would love to just e-travel. Travel seems to be for the majority of people around the world going from the bedroom into the kitchen into the living room. People want to travel. And as we slowly start to climb out of this pandemic, the world of e-travel, I think, will catch on even more for people that don't want to travel or can't in certain countries. But you want to get to the Louvre, you want to get to the Eiffel Tower, you want to get to places around the world that you've always wanted to get to. We're looking at digital twins as being, again, that experiential new way of going. And of course, the content development. I mean, we're in a world now where anything is possible, especially on the visualization side. But as we start to see the increase in quality of things like holographics, we are right at the cusp of creating a new dimension. And that's where I think digital twins is really where that idea of an alternative dimension becomes something that's not scary, like part of a science fiction movie, but can become inspirational for safety, for security, for mental health, for entertainment in ways that I know my son's going to be experiencing entertainment like it was probably fantasy for me. So it's happening quick. I think another area that I wanted to also go here is this idea of esports, which is more or less known as competitive gaming. What you're looking at is the inside of where the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Raptors play hockey and basketball. This is a full size arena of over 20,000 people that sat for 3 days to watch people play games. Another 40 million were watching online, streamed in real time. This is League of Legends, owned by Tencent in China. And they have competitive teams that go around the world for these competitions live, but then are also, again, this idea of mixed reality, are also seen in the digital realm. We are now designing, we're right in the middle of design of taking e-gaming to the next level for a facility that would be built specifically for that sport. Because inside of a hockey or, a basketball type of arena like this, it quite doesn't work well for the user experience. So again, digital twins are helping us try to understand what that experience is from sound, from sight, from smell. And starting this process of meeting the demands of the market, of creating new building types in ways like we've never seen before. The last project I wanted to show you is something near and dear to my heart. It's a philanthropic effort that is not meant to make money. It's called the Jericho Center of Medical Diplomacy, being right now designed for the West Bank in Palestine to address women's breast cancer. There is a technology that our group were provided. It is a Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense technology. It's a breathalyzer that you blow into that has an accuracy rate of about 96% of early stage women's breast cancer. Amazing technology. Now, why is that important in that part of the world? Well, over the past 20 years, women's breast cancer has exploded as almost like a pandemic type of thing within the Middle East region. A lot of it has to do with the wars and the toxins from all of the wars that have happened that are in the air and whatnot, in the water, and also the fact that culturally, women do not like to touch their breasts or have others touch their breast or put into machines, so there's no screening or lack of screening. This breathalyzer provides the screening. We are now working with the regional hospitals in both Egypt, Jordan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia to perform surgeries, if necessary, to combat if this breast cancer is discovered. But our job is to create the convalescence area, the healing areas, the healing spaces, based upon some foundational things like sustainable, renewable, net zero. We were doing this anyway. I just wanted to show it. If you were doing business not like this in the past, shame on you. But this is the new reality, and we measure for it. So as we start to move into this world of creating space from ideas, the digital twin will provide us a communication to people that are providing the funding to actually make this convalescence center a reality, and the services of the screening first and then the surgery second, potentially free, right? In order to stop this pandemic, we're taking scenes like from here in Jeddah about looking at passive design, where we take wind into consideration for cooling, for energy production. Being able to create these inspirational environments for healing is near and dear to our world, where we have certain foundation aesthetics as real estate developers and designers, where we really do believe space can help the healing process, either through light, color, air quality, and of course, how the space reacts with you. Do you feel safe? Do you feel good? Do you feel comfortable? All those things, again, are about the human experience. We're also looking at wonderful ways of taking the digital twins and moving it into an area of energy. In this case, these are land art generators that can take wind, and as they oscillate and move, they're driving turbines to create power. They can be aesthetically beautiful. They are sometimes fun, being able to put them up high, for the solar experience, being able to move with the sun. All these things are tasteful, but meaningful, and they have a functionality that could not have been done without the simulation of a digital twin. And here's some just final examples of this idea of land art generators, things that I just find cool, right? And isn't that part of the human experience to just be inspired and a wow? I think we need more wow in our industry. So let's start using the digital twins in ways that haven't been thought of before. In this case, biomimicry. We have these shades that go up during the day to protect plaza areas from the sun. And if it does rain, it actually captures that rainwater. But at night, they fold up because, again, in this case, outside of Jericho in the West Bank, you want to see the beautiful night sky and also release the heat. So using biomimicry and trying to learn from this should be a primary use of the world of digital twins. And finally, where's the future state? Well, I had talked about this idea of an omniverse or federated metaverse, where we can start to link together many different types of virtual experiences that could mimic what happens in reality, or maybe not. Imagine being able to put together two different types of digital buildings that maybe you want to do it as a fantasy, as a folly. It's part of a stage set. I love certain types of movies that make you think because they've mashed together two things in reality that could never be, but it's just an interesting environment. Ready Player One being one of those, with the Oasis, right? Matrix being another. I also found that there was a movie, and I'm blanking on it right now. Oh, Big Hero 6, right? Which was that animated fantasy where they actually took Tokyo and San Francisco and mashed them together. Well, we can learn from things like that, and it's fun and it challenges us. So what we do is that we partner up with the best in the world in order to make this real. And one of those is a group called Iconic Engine. They are a subsidiary of the number one special effects group out of Hollywood called Digital Domain. Digital Domain were the conductors. They were sitting on top of the vast amount of companies that worked to create the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So everything from Iron Man to the Avengers. And they're now getting into the world of creating metaverses in very unique ways. In this case, what you're taking a look at is the reality capture of human beings. There is a technology that they use that you can capture yourself through your camera, and it will know your gait, meaning the way you walk. It will understand how you use your hands or not, how you tilt your head, all those things, so that you can create your own digital twin of yourself and now start to tie that back into social environments. So in this case, it's for telepresencing, being able to have literally the idea of a hologram of teammates around you, but they are sitting somewhere else. This idea of co-watching, co-presence is this will be released in September of this year to the global audience, and it is a fantastic way of moving beyond Zoom, like this two-dimensional way of communicating, and actually getting into a better experience. This digital twin is actively being used right now to, again, telepresence yourself so that we can create the Jedi Council, where you are virtually and physically mixed reality all around each other. So what's also interesting about this is the way that they've also gotten things like Facebook with their Oculus, Apple, and Google all involved with this, so that it is it's an anytime, anywhere, any device type of way of working and living inside of a metaverse. Some of it can be cartoonish, as you see here. What we're discussing with them is using our photorealistic cityscapes, so like, Times Square, Trafalgar Square, Tiananmen Square, and actually then superimpose that so that you have your environment with haptic, so that you're not walking through walls, and you feel it through whatever device that you're on. Again, trying to get into that entire world of a multi-sensory, a multi-dimensional way of using digital twins that has never been done before. The ability to actually, we were watching the FIFA World Cup yesterday inside of this environment. Sorry, not the FIFA World Cup, the Euros. Sorry about that. And actually then superimposing the stadium, as you see here, so that we can be with our friends, and actually start a different type of social contract with each other about trusting what you're seeing. So I wanted to show that just as a brief of where the future's coming. But this is where, and I'll close out with this. This is where I think we can start to put some real power behind what we're doing. This idea of distributed ledger technology is something that I think we should all at least put into effect of learning about from a intellectual standpoint to begin with, because it is a place for our data, either a single point of data or a block of data, like a building information model, can sit and reside somewhere that can be then put into a contractual world, and most importantly, a way of having a transactional world. So distributed ledger technology sometimes uses a way of writing code and then moving that information, that's called blockchain. And a very simple way of looking at it is that we all know BIM, and it has its processes. And there's an information exchange that can be hooked into, like, let's say, a smart contract that everyone agrees to, that gets put onto a blockchain. The blockchain then allows every one of the computers that are part of that network to agree. And it's usually done in an if-then type of way of saying, yes, that block of information is authentic. Let's put it onto the chain. Now we don't have to worry about it, which means we can automate certain things like contractual payments based upon milestone agreements, all sorts of things that we already do in our industry. So by associating the digital twin into the smart contract, we have the ability to actually now have site information of, like, let's say, a beam, right? The beam should have a GPS signal off of it in some format. It could be done through QR codes or all sorts of things, right? It's now in place geospatially. It checks, and it says BIM here, but it really should be a federated metaverse model. Says, yes, according to my geospatial position inside of my digital twin, that beam was placed properly. Then what happens is it gets logged up into the blockchain. The blockchain says, oh, this is right. It goes into a check system to say, yep, the GPS says it's good, the metaverse says it's good, or the digital twin, conduct payment. And that is the new world. We're getting away from a lot of fluff, and this is where we're seeing some amazing work being done, both in Europe, in the Middle East, China, and just starting here in the US. The reason why I put the US last is that we have these things called lawyers, and of course authorities having jurisdiction everywhere, limiting the amount of innovation. So it's going to be a bare knuckle fight for what we want to do. It's going to be, inspector by inspector, lawyer by lawyer, in order to get this going. But in other parts of the world, we're seeing this just absolutely take off, which means we are one step away, once you put it onto the blockchain, of creating real estate-backed securities. Now, I think you've all heard of this thing called NFTs, right? Well, NFTs are non-fungible tokens. Tokens sit on the blockchain. And that means that series of data is based upon sometimes of a limitation, like a collectible, like in the case of everyone in the US, baseball cards, right? Well, what you're looking at is the world's first baseball cards for the built environment, called architect cards. You have a picture of the building and all the stats, just like a baseball card. Right? Who built it? Is it still there? How many square feet? Blah, 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 blah. We also have entire cities. In this case, this is the entire city of Dallas with all the baseball cards of the iconic buildings of Dallas. We also have, let's say, Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill, a select portfolio of their work. Now, the reason why I'm showing this to you is because NFTs, we're going to be putting this up as a digital card. So instead of a static image, we're using a digital twin. So digital twins now can be used in a multitude of ways. You have to start thinking of them as digital assets, not just digital twins, because as they're assets, you can put them on the blockchain. And now I can do an NFT, which means that I can sell portions of the digital representation of that particular building to people. It's like a stock market, except that now we're also looking at fungible tokens. And this is where things get exciting. The fungible tokens means that it truly is transactionable. In other words, you physically can own it and it has liquidity to it, like a stock market. This is backed by, and that means that your fungible token, your digital twin, can be securitized, which means you can sell portions of it. And this is being done right now in Australia, where you can actually fractionalize ownership of the digital twin, and that digital twin has it's a pinned value to the actual physical real estate itself. So in other words, you have a $10 million building. Your digital twin, when it goes up on the blockchain, if you choose to make it a fungible token, now has an initial baseline of a $10 million valuation, but it's digital. Now you're hearing what I'm doing with this. I'm creating the ability to sell shares in that because it's Security Exchange Commission controlled. It's a true security. Now all of a sudden people can own a piece of that $10 million building in a virtual world. Virtual, digital real estate backed securities. Ultimately, the aspiration of where this goes, especially for something like our virtual reality theme park, is that we will have digital currency, our own digital currency for our developments. But it's not going to be backed with, made up values like Bitcoin and, garbage like that. We're going to be basing it on real estate value. So think about this. Real estate backed digital currency is going to be a thing in our lifetime. And anyone that is building the built environment digitally, are actually creating currency every time you hit the enter key. So that is where we are as a company. We are having a lot of fun. I want to thank Roy and the talented team over at Technostruct for giving me this opportunity to share with y'all. And I just want to leave you with this, with this one thing that thank you, for continuing to participate in building our built environment. It is a noble cause. Again, we're one of the four necessary items of creating shelter that keeps our human species alive. And I just wish you all the success and luck. Thank you. Back to you, Roy.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, it was quite informative. I mean, I'm not aware of a few of the things that you just said, especially some of the case studies and the China thing. Before I get into the Q&A, I think our good friend Chris Guiglielmelli has raised his hand. So just let him ask the question himself.
Sure.
Chris, over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. It's been a long time. I really enjoyed your presentation. Paul and I had worked together several years ago. I look forward to seeing more of your progress, and my hand's up to you.
Well, thank you, Chris. Your $20 is in the mail.
All right. The next person who wants to ask is SMA. Not sure the name. SMA, I'm not sure. Someone's raised their hand, but still on mute. So let it be for now. So I'm going to ask with a slightly different question. And this one's come from someone. So what role does or can big data and data analytics play in digital twins?
I think that most people have a hard time with little data let alone big data. So I would just focus in on little data first. Get your own house in order. Being able to tap into data lakes and other large scale, worlds is something that we are all locking arms with right now, right? I mean, there is no, you know, proper way of diving into it because, quite frankly, the majority of data, if it's out of context and unstructured, do you really trust it? Right. I think that as we start moving forward into this 2.0 world of having a value around the data, and really realizing, holy cow, I could have the most amazing, BIM 360 setup, and I can have the most, amazing idea as a design aesthetic, and I want to design this building and build it, great. If you do not have a trust of where your information came from,
Mhm.
let alone where the data came from, you're building on a house of cards, which is why we're taking a look beyond the software manufacturers that are now doing cloud-based solutions and saying, who are going to be my data banks that I trust? Who's going to create the first AEC data escrow where we really do understand that that piece of data is immutable? This is why things like the distributed ledger technologies, blockchain, things like that become more and more and more important every day, because we can't trust data if it's little data, big data, or medium data. Because again, the analytics will only show you what they are allowed to dive into. I think a lot of the analytics, especially when it's starting to drive things like design, like generative design and other types of cool, experiments. But wow, I don't know if I would trust even some of our older data, where we literally have to go in and unwash the wash we created, right, in order to get things done. In today's world, you can't hide. We now have a microscope onto every piece of data that you're putting into your digital twins, and it's going to show warts and all. So no matter how good your overall model is, quote unquote, big data, if there's one piece of data that's not, your failure.
That's where data curation comes in, right, Paul?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is where, I think there's, what I love about this period of time is that we're having people like data scientists now being part of design teams. This is kind of cool, where all of a sudden we have, a different perspective of how to have a relationship with data, right? And have a respect for it. Because once you put it into the showtime, it's out in the field and people are using it to build the built environment, it's too late. So the quality control, quality assurance, this idea of a data banking or data escrow, to prove that that data is authentic and it's safe and it's truthful, that's an entire industry that I've yet to see emerge, but it could happen.
I'm going to extend this a little bit, but there are, before we run out of time. For example, the one example is data centers. Okay, say Microsoft, we do data centers. I can't name for whom, and they're across 50 states, say, or they will be. They plan to be. So if with digital twins, and if we can have a big data backbone built into it, we're not limiting ourselves to just asset management, right? We can do a lot more with it. We can do a predictive analysis in terms of what goes wrong or what has statistically gone wrong for what reason. Correct. Especially, it's like data center is an easy one. For example, metro rail, India is doing so many, right? And it's all 5D BIM, quote unquote. Or what are they going to do with it? If they're only doing for asset management, might as well not do it, because there's not going to integrate into the integration process it's going to get lost in detail. But if we can do something where we're talking about digital twins and then big data as a backbone and predictive analysis, then then it starts making business sense in the long run. Or have I just gone too far down the future?
No, actually, and this is where you start to see some of these startups making bodacious claims about everything's AI, now, right? And I'm going, yeah, no, you're not. You know, and when the adults actually enter the conversation and slap down a lot of that, bull crap, what it does come down to is exactly what you're saying, which is this idea of making predictions based upon pattern behavior, right? Either pattern behavior of individuals, humans, or pattern behavior of systems, equipment, or the actual data center itself. And over time, as you start to see the machine learning part of it, right? We can start then to create those analysis so that the next data center that's being built can be done better, right? And that's the hope, that we continue this pathway of discovery, communicating it, right? Which is where I think webinars like this are great, Roy. And I hope that you keep the masterclass series going, because we're all learning here. I mean, we're all on a cow path. There is no superhighway that someone's like going to whip out of left field and we're all going to go, wow. There is no easy button. Zero easy button out there. There's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I asked this because I'm part of, or sort of from the outside, a part of a big data technology firm in Connecticut and in India. So a lot of people will start hating me for saying this, but construction is 5-6 years behind a lot of these industries in terms of tech. But we'll come to that. Let me just take up some of the questions that a lot of questions on tandem, or it is tandem, and possibilities of digital twin. They're advertising it more for architecture, but have you had a chance of looking at it?
Yeah, Autodesk is doing what they do best. They're the world's greatest marketers. Yep. Period. Show me. And don't base it on Revit. I know Revit. I was part of the original team. I know what it can do. I know what it can't do. I would play to people's strengths. And I like the fact that Autodesk is now, keeping up with the Joneses, because, Bentley really embraced this, about 2-3 years ago, beyond the hype. And they're actually, grabbing people's shoulder to shoulder and let's figure this out. Have they been perfect? Nope. But I think that we cannot ignore when Autodesk starts a process, we should be having a different type of relationship with them. We do not need yet another glue. Because the industry wasn't asking for it, yet it was thrown at us, sort of like throwing something into the middle of a pool, and we had to go dive into the pool to figure it out. And when we came out, we said, well, that was a big nothing burger. The hell, right? I think we should be assisting organizations like Autodesk, because we do not need them to have a misstep. We want to encourage them to continue to create tools for ourselves, except for this. The relationship then with these large scale software manufacturers, and I would include Procore and others into that now that they're publicly traded and whatnot. There's a danger right now to them, and it's an existential threat, and it comes from within us. I have an entire generation of employees that are not waiting for the next release or the tandem thing to happen. They're saying, I can code. And I say, go ahead. And guess what? This is part of their school. This is part of their skill sets now. I'm not waiting for the software manufacturers. I'm looking at open APIs and how to connect things together, not to create Frankenstein, but because it's a short cycle time that I need a solution. I can have a disposable way of creating digital solutions now. So although we should pay attention, I would not sit back and go, well, Autodesk will figure it out. How about we help Autodesk figure that out?
True. Well said. So I'm going to wait, as you said, I'm going to wait and see when it comes, and with all the bug fixes and all the releases, 0.10, and we'll see. Let's see the next one. Azure digital twins.
Now we're talking a little bit reality here.
Yeah.
And I tell you why. So there's going to be certain terms I use right now, and some of you may get it, others may not. But we form every single project every single one, from a birdhouse to our 12 million person city that we're underneath contract for, right? Every one of those, we start with a heterarchy. Now, a heterarchy is a way of taking a three-dimensional view of an org chart of how you would like the project to work. A one way of looking at it is a system, call it a transportation system or a healthcare system, an education system, a citizen's safety system, whatever that system is. Think of those as horizontal layers. Okay,
Mhm.
I have to think like a chef every time I'm designing a city because I have to take into account contextual issues, everything from climate to culture to religion. I mean, all sorts of things that make up that community that doesn't exist right now. So by breaking apart every one of those systems, I'm creating a system of systems, and I create what's called an ontology, which is a vertical solution that ties together my horizontal systems. That ontology is like ingredients, although we call them innovations, ingredients for a recipe, and everyone's different. Which means that when I see Microsoft come out and publish a smart city ontology based upon Azure, that made me smile this wide. I'm like, do you know how many hours you just saved me? Right now, people are going to say, yeah, but it's focused in on Azure. Not necessarily. These white papers are really, 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 really important because you can choose Azure, but just like with Vim, I can choose to use Unity or my preferred gaming engine, Unreal. It's a way of having a conversation with your data and then building a trust relationship over time. And that's where hierarchies, ontologies create what we now call taxonomies. And those taxonomies is exactly what we're talking about now, the way that we describe a digital twin. So that's the way that we enter every one of our projects, and it helps to at least frame it up like that, because we're not saying that we're doing cookie cutter. We're saying, here's the format, here's the different pieces of plumbing, and you should turn on the water here and water should come out.
So, there's a lot of demand for while we were sort of publicizing this session, there was a lot of demand for smart cities. So maybe one of these days we can have another session on smart cities, because
we should invite Prime Minister Modi in on that and ask how many he's been able to build.
Yeah, how I wish. I mean, I like the thought. There's another guy in India who is heading that, one of our politicians. Yeah. So the next question is, how far digital twins will help to integrate BIM and ERP?
And ERP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, ERP is just another data lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
If digital twins are able to connect the idea from the designer to the constructor
Mm-hmm.
in a way that does not cause confusion or has holes in it, which is why we have change orders and RFIs and all this stuff. If we can get that done, then as we start to take a look at more robust enterprise class environments, that's when I would feel more comfortable about having, a digital twin type of environment be that router, be that interpreter, right? Because ERP is not designed for our industry, and I know that firsthand. I was a corporate officer for a Fortune 500 company called K. Hovnanian Homes, and when I joined, I was in charge of all land development and home production. That's a big role, and means I had 8,500 employees that reported to me, right, in 18 different states, 20,000 homes every year, right? And what was interesting about that entire exercise was we were when I came into the job, they were implementing SAP with a management consulting group, and after about 2 months of me watching this horrific shoehorning of how ERP works and how our business had to change, we pulled the plug and we lost $64 million. That was a huge hit, but we did it because we were literally being led down into a car crash. And what we did was we eventually settled in on Oracle and we focused in on process. Process was where we led. It was not about how to use a punch list item out of Oracle. It was where in the process was punch list necessary, and what were the things in punch lists could we automate and should we automate. So when you start talking about taking this idea of large scale ERP type of solutions and having a digital twin be an interpreter or a router to talk to our industry, I would process map that until you could not process map it anymore. And if anyone on this webinar is not doing process mapping, learn it, because it is a great tool. It is a wonderful way of trying to understand how you choose technologies rather than trying to literally bolt on things together that should never have been bolted on before.
So here's one from Jacob Hearn.
Hey, Jacob, how are you, Jacob?
Let me try and unmute. I can't find him. Not sure if he's still in here.
He did write a question here.
Yeah,
he talks about why we shifted.
planned.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Jacob.
Hey, hi, Paul. How are you
Long time
doing?
no. Yeah, very, very good. This is. I feel like we're going to a reunion here.
Yes, very nice. Nice to see you. So basically, I have three questions, but I'll make it very short. So the first is, we are also automating the precast process within the concrete sector, and we really crash the limits of Revit right now. And so the question is about SolidWorks. Is it really? Do you choose it because it's more accurate, or it has more connectivity to CNC, or is it also really faster in proceeding, with API calls and so on?
Yeah, yes to all three.
Oh, nice.
And on the last one, it was an incremental speed. I wouldn't say it was, like going from, 2 tin cans to fiber. It wasn't that fast, but it was significant. Actually, another reason why we chose it was for its configurability. We wanted a configurator, right? Because we knew the limitations of the structurally insulated panels by size and by strength. Well, then it was up to us as designers to inform the homeowner. Well, you have a choice. You can have, your kitchen flipped on this side or this side. You can have your windows in this configuration. And we gave them some choice, so it seemed like it was customized, but it was mass produced. It's called mass customization. That's what SolidWorks is excellent with because of its memory and being able to understand those exterior limitations. Like, well, you may want to do that window here, but you know what? The window configuration that you've chosen, the price goes up because of more glazing or whatever it is, but it has an intelligence behind it, which I found to be very good. The fact that they're taking the CATIA team and integrating that with SolidWorks is going to be a very interesting next release, because again, SolidWorks was meant more for product manufacturing, which works very, very well inside of a factory setting, right? It does not work very well outside of a factory, quite frankly, which is why we have Revit, right? So the configuration within a disciplined and controlled environment provided certainty. So that was a good solution for that particular deliverable model. But then again, I wouldn't use SolidWorks for doing a skyscraper or something. That's the wrong tool.
Okay. Yeah, it's about villages in Africa. So, but yes, we will try it out. Thank you a lot. But there, it's basically Africa is one of the biggest emerging markets, so it's not the smallest villages.
Right.
But thank you very much. I will take a look at it and we will try it out. The second is there's also an Autodesk limitation we are seeking right now, because we are trying to use Forge to build digital twins. So what we've done is basically we integrate all the different authoring tools into Forge and make some APIs for it, basically, and also some information data from SAP and so on. But now we came to the point that it's really slowing down, and we have to split it up in so many user interfaces to get to the speed. So one question, is it possible with Vim to run Vim solely into the browser?
Yes.
Or yeah, nice. Okay,
Nice.
that's the answer I want. Yes.
And what's also cool is that it will take, like they're working with Sir Norman Foster's office right now with this 68-story tower. I believe it's in Kuwait or Bahrain, but it is a mega, like one of those big old Revit models, right? You know, it's like, you know, something crazy like 400 gig or something crazy like that, right? But it is designed impeccably, right? But the thing's very heavy. So the trick is how do you bring that into an environment so that you can then have a federated metaverse eventually without slowing down? And more importantly, how long does it take to import it into a .vim type of environment? 3 minutes.
Awesome.
3
Okay,
minutes
nice.
with amazing fidelity. So these guys came out of a project that was killed by Autodesk called Stingray. And they've created Vim, and I've just been blown away with what they've been able to do so far. But yeah, go check out vimaec.com. They're doing some pretty remarkable things with technology.
Nice. Afterwards, I will do it totally. So, and the third question, you've talked about blockchain and how it will affect our industry. I'm think accordingly to you, but I don't think that we will use the computers really of the real estate, because I think there's two less computers basically, two less agents. Do you also think that we will, bind these processes to an existing blockchain? Is that what you thought? That you
Yes.
make some, okay, nice. So that's it.
Yeah, because if we were to do it ourselves, you're right. We just don't have the numbers right now, and to get. And it's all about the numbers, except that in certain cases, there's certain technologies like Ethereum, it's just too big. And so is Bitcoin, which is why they're limiting it to 21 million coins, right? So there's a real need for speed. And what we're using is a consolidator blockchain that a lot of the crypto bros are all up in arms about, called Solana. Which speeds up the transactional accounts. For those of you that may not understand what we're talking about here, blockchain works. Well, first of all, it's based on arcade technology, right? Games, literally pinball machines. That's what blockchain was built around, which is why we have tokens. Right, and we have ways of punishing people and then supplying people with with tokens to say, hey, you've done good. When you create a blockchain, though, you have no central server, unlike the internet. So it's a decentralized way of looking at information. But what the blockchain technology does is that it will then take a group of data and call it, okay, everyone has to agree that this is X, whatever X is. And then the entire network has to agree, which is, wow, okay, that can mean hundreds of millions or tens of millions or millions of individual laptops and computers and all sorts of things, because it's decentralized, which is why it takes a long time to mine a coin, because everyone has to agree that that particular block of data is, well, it's Bitcoin or it's Dogecoin or whatever. Now, what's happening now is that we have Ethereum, which is in its second version called ETH. Its first version failed on itself. The second version is about to fail on itself because it's too big, it's too clunky, it's too, it's like almost like we were saying with, with Revit. It just takes too long, right? So what Solana does is that it consolidates blocks of these individual computers to say you are not so much a central server, but you're acting on behalf of these other millions of things to say yes, so I can speed up my transactions. And we find that to be a very agile way of using blockchain in a way that I think can be transactional for us from a digital currency standpoint. But up until now, I mean, this is like, it's the Wild West, still. So, we're still learning. We have a lot to learn. But we feel like we're on the right track, especially since we now have the mechanism from the Securities and Exchange Commission and the right types of guidelines that we have to adhere to actually make a securitized token. Wow. We've just created money from nothing. And I really shouldn't say that. It's not from nothing. We've created money from an idea that is based upon real estate value. And I couldn't be happier. I mean, I'm just over the moon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Hope we see each other again after COVID, let's say.
Yeah, see, Jacob, you'll be the first person I run to. I think it should be Dublin.
I come to Memphis. I come to Memphis. I will join you.
Sounds good.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And one thing, Roy, also that I want to let the entire audience know, because I know we've been a little over time. I'm a huge ice hockey fan. Okay, I used to play it as a kid, and where I played it in high school, I was the captain of my high school hockey team. My high school was literally a half a kilometer away from an arena called the Nassau Coliseum, where the New York Islanders played hockey. And during those times, for 4 years, they won the championship, the Stanley Cup. Well, my New York Islanders have sucked for 38 years. Mm-hmm. And they are one win away. If they win tonight, they go to the Stanley Cup Finals. So let's go Islanders.
Okay.
That's for you, John Clinton.
Yeah, there's so many known faces. I see Johannes Rainer. He used to be a contact back in London. So many people here.
Oh, also, there's a question. The Vim website is vimaec.com. So vimaec.com. I just saw a question up there that I said that really quick.
Yeah. So, yeah, online training on digital twins. Yeah, you can contact us, Technostruct Academy. But how much can APIs replace blockchain needs? We've done a lot of questions on blockchain, Paul. I will go back to a few more fundamental questions because that's a very interesting topic, and we can talk about it. I'm sure you can talk about it for a long time. Let's see. Okay, is the role of game engine just to create visualization for digital twin?
No, and this is where I think our industry needs to double down on its knowledge of what a gaming engine really does. It used to be called a real-time engine, right? I mean, that's literally what it was, and it was a way of moving through digital space. And since digital space is infinite, you needed to sort of replicate it to our environment that has limitations like gravity, right? So there are gaming engines that are better than others, usually based upon making the digital environment more like the Earth environment, just so that there's contextualization, right? So that means that you should be looking for things like gaming physics engines that reside within that environment. Physics can be used either to replicate exact forces, like on a human or an inanimate object, or you can make an individual inanimate object more digital, like it's floating in space. But you actually have that, reality of gravity holding you onto a specific surface. So that's one thing that we take a look at, which becomes a very good experiential thing beyond visualization. Another one is the data accuracy of the geoposition of a lot of these things. So if you want immutable, that yes, this building is at this latitude, this longitude, at this corner of the building, you can get accuracies into the millimeters of what then is replicated in real life. So those are just two quick examples about what gaming engines provide as a value add.
Other question, and this has been asked before. So I'm going to read that out. Digital twin is useful for creating an entire city digitally. So will it only be useful for governments as clients, or is it not useful directly for private sector clients?
Well, it depends on how you want to position the tool. I think that depending on what your professional level is of quality, you can choose, and it's not either or, and it's not bad, but you may want to just think about your building. And that's what CAD has brought us. That's what BIM first showed us. It was about the individual asset. But if you're, in my opinion, if you really want to understand the benefits and the ramifications that what your building and the built environment has in its surroundings, that's where digital twins become more valuable, where you're providing a contextualization that can then start asking better questions, such as, let's say it's an office building, it's 7 stories tall, it's 5 p.m. on a Friday, it's about 89% occupied. What happens at 5:01? It increases traffic in the area. Should we be then talking to our city council members about putting in a stoplight, because you're going to be causing a situation that could potentially hurt people? These are the contextualizations and the real designers out there that are moving beyond the individual focus of an individual structure, because our structure lives on a spaceship that we call planet Earth. And the more that we can ask questions like that, about, well, I'm bringing this particular situation into this part of the planet Earth. How am I disrupting this? Either good disruption or bad disruption, which then also leads to not just the functionality of this thing, but what is it doing to the air? What is it doing to the groundwater? What is it doing to these things? That we should be asking those questions anyway. So the digital twin environment, the metaverse, provides us the ability to be a better professional, because it's going to challenge us to ask harder questions about what we are doing. And, another pet peeve of mine is how people are using BIM and digital twins for the purposes of creating two-dimensional construction documents. Why not just stick with AutoCAD? You were better at it. Why bother going there? Well, this is why, because we can do a lot of other things. It's not just communicating design intent out to the constructors. But stop using BIM just to create 2D documents. That's stupid.
I'm going to add on to that, Paul, if I may. So 3 years back, Revit wasn't what it used to be. A lot of the software wasn't what it used to be. And so I can't name the project or the client, but you can take a wild guess. It's the largest tech firm in the world in California, coming up with its office building. And so 2,000 uniquely shaped roof panels. Okay. And everybody said, we were the BIM managers. We were not producing any BIM. So we were just managing the BIM. And so everybody said, we can't do this in Revit. Client wants it in Revit. You can't go the entire, the Grasshopper, any of the other stuff. It has to be native Revit. And they were using all sort of different software, because different people were using different software, Tekla, this, that, but it had to be brought back to native Revit for some reason. So we said, okay, fair enough. We'll give it a try. We did it in Dynamo. But the question was, and we went on to ask the end client, not the general contractor, because we're now working with them as engineers. Why do you want us to do that? Okay. About 6 months into the project, said we're doing something. We're doing digital twins. We're experimenting with digital twins. And that was the first time I had heard someone talk about it in real terms, not just in seminars or for a singular project for cities and all of that. That's fine. They ended up doing a lot of it. Maybe they're going to come up with a software or a solution, or they're going to acquire a software or a solution. I don't know, but it can be done. It has been done. And maybe that's an experiment they did in California. But so it can be done for a singular project. If you have the right questions you're asking, because if you just want to do it for the heck of it, might as well, just as Paul said, do it through CAD. Because the very basic question, and that's the question that a lot of people should ask first, is the difference between BIM and digital twins. And Paul, if you can just talk for a couple of minutes, because that's the basic question people don't ask. BIM and digital twins, how is it different? I think you talked about it in the first slide, but
well, yeah, I think that, for all intents and purposes, building information modeling is usually created by a singular authoring piece of software to help with the communication of the delivery and the constructability of a capital asset, period. what digital twins do is that it opens up for additional types of softwares to be combined into providing more of a communication tool, a service. I would rather consider digital twins as a service rather than a product, where BIM provides us the ability to deliver a project as a product, where digital twins are a continuous environment for asking the proper questions, right? So that's how we differentiate it, and it's more nomenclature. I think unless you're doing it, there's almost like an instinctual thing of going, well, yeah, that's why we don't even use the word digital twins internally. We use metaverse, right? Because it provides that, that's that other dimension, right? And the fact that we can start thinking about it creatively rather than treating it as like an ISO standard, right? I mean, it's a digital twin metaverse is more of a canvas, where BIM is more of an actual painting, if that makes sense. The analogies are tough because I can get challenged on that and probably agree with it too, because again, the world of digital twins and BIM, even, man, it's a big bucket, and it's like an elephant, right? I could be touching the trunk. I hope it's the trunk. I hope it's not the tail. And calling it the elephant, right? And someone else could be touching the ears and say, no, this is the elephant. And that's where we're at right now. I think it's a maturation process, and we'll get it. We'll get it. I think there's going to be a lot more failures than they are success stories, but that's why we're up here. I think that telling the stories of failures should be on the front part of any presentation, because that's real. Look at some of the failures I've been through, right? That you and I have been through, Roy.
Yes, I think I can name one.
Right, and sometimes it has nothing to do with the technology, right?
Sure.
And that would be the same for projects. Sometimes projects that use a certain technology, I've watched people purposefully make sure, because we wanted a delivered model, not a bunch of floor plans, sabotage a project, with misinformation. Right? It's like, people are people, and they are they're traveling through space on our spaceship Earth, just like us, and it depends on how people want to spend their time. There's a community outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania called the Amish, and they don't use anything with power, electricity. They still drive around in horse and buggies, and they thrive. They've got a nice little community. There's a place for people that are not going to use BIM properly too. And if they want, there's a place in the world for the Amish too, is what I'm used to saying. They're not wrong. It's just that, the industry is going to move beyond them.
True. And we can learn a lot from the other industries. I mean, we're talking about digital twins here in the construction industry today, and they stopped talking about it in the automobile industry a few years back. Okay, they moved on. So, but yeah, I mean, a more basic way of saying is, BIM's responsible for smart building construction, and digital twins are key to managing them. I mean, simplifying it, oversimplifying it. Well, here's a question, and I want to skip this, and we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to limit it to the next 2-3 minutes, because and the question that's there is, how are physical and cybersecurity systems built into digital twins? And as a follow-up question, is one second. Somebody wrote that question and they deleted it. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. So also, what about security of the model? So based on requirements, how far the underdeveloping countries could implement BIM with poor connectivity and infrastructure? Also, what about the security of the models?
So let me back into just the security piece. no matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough. Only because there are ways of workarounds of attacks of just the general nature of the digital realm. It's your risk tolerance level is really what's being managed, because just when you think you have it airtight, it's not. And it's not anyone's fault. It's about how you manage, again, your behavior and your risk tolerance. Having worked with government agencies, Department of Defense's, not just the U.S. ones, and of course, the ability for us to build in certain protocols for security, because we just don't deal with the digital model. I have got to protect people's lives, right? And in certain cases, I'm building, targets, literally targets for terrorists and people that are freedom fighters and whatever hat people want to wear. Humans are humans. And I would suggest that when we start our process, of course, we have some of the built-in stuff that's always there. We do have disciplines as to certain rights, roles, responsibilities about access to models and digital assets. There are protocols that we put in place depending on the project of the not just the access to it, but more importantly, who has the ability to keep the data from going out. Think Snowden. It used to be you just protected yourself through buying cybersecurity things, McAfee and all these other Norton antivirus and just all this stuff. But what Snowden showed us by taking all that NSA information and then spewing it out onto social media was that we're in a two-front war. We have to worry about the data has its own personality. It does not want to be attacked, but it wants to be free. Data will always want to be free. It's trying to find its way out of your spreadsheet. It's trying to find a way out of that PowerPoint. It's trying to find a way out of your Revit model. So you have to increase the amount of physical security, meaning what are the protocols about certain types of information to get out of your office, and your office now is virtual. So there's that issue, along with protecting the attacks that can happen from outside and inside. So this is one of these extras that if anyone says, well, you do this, this, and this, and you got it, they're full of crap. Right now, this is an ongoing way of a normal that we just have to be aware of, especially when you get into larger organizations or larger scale projects like what we deal with, dealing with things like ransomware. Look what happened a month ago. The entire east coast of the United States into the southern part of the United States, that entire pipeline of oil was shut down because of ransomware, right? This stuff's real. So I'm not going to poo-poo it. It actually deserves its own masterclass of what are those protocols. Because for instance, we designed a city in the northern part of Jeddah, right on the Red Sea, on the Corniche, called Jeddah Economic City. Right smack in the middle is what's coming up out of the ground will be the world's tallest building, 1 kilometer tall. From there, we did a concentric circle out to 100 kilometers of protocols of different types of threats. And it was an amazing thing, every quarter of a kilometer, moving in concentric circles to the kilometer tall tower. There were different ways about how we would start to either evade an ongoing attack, because at a certain point, if a person wanted to attack within a certain circle, the building was done. There was nothing you could do about it. So what do? You reach out from that circle and you start to get into different types of security protocols to prevent the initial attack from happening. We deal with drones, right? And the attack on Saudi Aramco's refineries a few years ago, that was real, and that was all done through drones. So in the same way that we have to adhere to a discipline, I think having a strategic plan for your office that is tied so tightly to both your business plan and your technology plan, that your cybersecurity and your security should be one document that helps support those business initiatives and supports the technology that you operate. Because if you think by putting up, a really cool, way of protecting your model, what happens when the threat is actually the author of the model? So
True. Well said. Yeah. One quick question from Lane Court. You mentioned Hensel Phelps and others. Just asking who are the others? I also
yeah, Hensel Phelps is doing a wonderful job with Spot. They dove right into it, and they've been using it for reality capture, LiDAR, things like that, especially hard to get to places where it's a mechanical dog. So you can afford to let it go. What we are seeing, though, is beyond Spot, are local subcontractors like Demolition, right, that are using tools from Stanley that are like mini bobcats that are remote controlled by a quote unquote pilot, so that when you are demolishing or getting rid of a certain part, like let's say it's a tenant fit out or an extension onto a building, that type of thing, it's dangerous for people to go in there and start to take things apart. By using robotics, it becomes a really good tool. And I believe it's in Indianapolis. It's like indiedemo.com, or I can find out and I can send it out, and you can, let people know where this is as a resource. But we're finding the robotics at the local level more than we are at a national level, only because national level you need scale, right? But it's a fun time because there are no rules, and so that means anything can be broken.
Hensel Phelps have been a bit of a one step ahead kind of a firm. I have a friend there in their Phoenix, Massa, Arizona office, Sarush Maharu. So they've been a little ahead of time.
I like when organizations like that do get the publicity. DPR being another one. With Anil and his team. I would point to Suffolk Construction as well. Very, very ahead of their. Yeah, and I love that there's pockets of like within our community that are willing to let people know that, hey man, I'm doing this and we failed, and in other cases we've succeeded. I tend to question the organizations out there, both on the design side, the construction side, the trade side, that they're just perfect. It's like, yeah, right. Not in our industry. So I think the truth definitely speaks volumes, and I think we can learn a lot more from our mistakes.
You got to be nimble on your feet because things are changing. The demands are changing, and you cannot have a very stringent mindset and say, this is how it's going to work. No, you got to be nimble on your feet in the construction project, especially when you're trying to use technology. I'm going to just do one more question because Steve is going to probably start writing to both of us if I don't ask the question. With the advent of digital twins, is it perceived that CAD and BIM will all be rolled under the digital twin umbrella for all design, engineering, and construction doc? If yes, what time frame? 10 years? How will this affect all AEC firms individually, collectively, or those with complete, truly in-house capabilities that execute design, architecture, engineering, and construction? Long question.
I think it's irrelevant. One is nothing to do with another, unless you choose that pathway. And what I mean by that is that there are other industries that are doing digital twin-ish type of environments that have nothing to do with CAD and BIM. Nothing. So I don't know why that would be in the context of why that needs to be underneath an umbrella, other than that particular, that's an approach. And it's probably too narrow because, we don't know what the next tools are. We can have ideas, especially since we're going to be having a new class of worker in place. So, I asked the question, if that worker is an inanimate object called a robot, or if we're going to more and more of an industrialized, factory line, the accuracy is well beyond BIM. It's actually beyond some of the knowledge that most people have of creating the built environment. So are we looking at a new classification of software, of robot control, automation control, that type of thing that we can learn from other industries? And that would be more of an important use of a digital twin than trying to, take something that was not meant to be part of the digital twin ecosystem and shoehorning it in. So if people want to use things like Revit and they're finding that they have success, that's an approach. But is that the world of digital twins? No. That's why I say it's irrelevant. One has nothing to do. One is not contingent on the other. But if you plan on putting them together, well, then go for it, because then you figured out how that works for your project or your firm. But that would not be something that I would, put a flag up around. Sorry, Steve.
Okay. But where he's coming from, see, we've got to understand, Steve represents a huge part of the construction industry, where the engineering and driven and not very data driven and not very technology, they're trying their best to get the technology in place, which is the first step of doing it right, because they're not, technology isn't driving the construction needs are driving technology. So this question is, to my mind, there's a lot of people who shy away from asking this question, and Steve's asking. So that's there.
Here's my challenge back. Do we constantly have to look back and lend a hand to pull people forward when the industry is changing? And those were right out of your mouth, Roy. And if the industry is changing, does that mean that we have to coddle people, that to say, oh, poor Mr. CAD, we'll find a place for you too. This isn't a puppy chamber. This is real hard facts, and there's going to be certain people that become irrelevant over time because it's changing, and that's okay. You can go ahead and change with it, or hold on to your past and put your feet down saying, well, we've always done it this way. And that's why I am very, 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 bullish on our industry changing its stripes. We will change. This isn't about just delivery, the same old, because when we are using things like blockchain, guess who gets cut out? All the people that are making money off the inefficiencies in our industry. And there's a lot of them. There's entire professions that make money off the inefficiencies about how we operate. So that's a hard truth. Another hard truth is I don't think we should be building as many buildings as we do. Right now, we have enough out there that we can repurpose a lot, which will help both from the financial sustainability and the environmental sustainability. Right now, when you take a look at the downtowns, right, people coming back to work, the hybrid environments, guess what? Listen to CNBC, listen to Bloomberg, read the Wall Street Journal. These large companies don't need as much space anymore. They are living with the hybrid environments. What are you going to do with that extra space? So another hard truth is there's a lot of people on this call that I'm taking food off their table by saying, should you morally and ethically constantly be looking at new construction, or are we in the business now of creating a better built environment? And that is a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
It is, Paul. We'd be out of business.
No, it wouldn't. The retrofit business would be booming, right? But then again, it's not an either or. I'm not saying cut off all new construction. It's, should we be asking the question, do we need that particular structure for our business, or for shelter, or for healing our community, for attending to acute and chronic diseases and medical, and for teaching our children better? So I think that we have a beautiful future in front of us. We need to make room at the table for newer types of skill sets that quite frankly, I don't know if they're going to come from within or they're going to come from from outside. But I do know that even in our organization during this time of COVID, we've hired full-time a cultural anthropologist as part of our main design team, that we really are walking the walk. We're going to start with humans first and figure out what innovations are necessary to inspire them and have a delightful experience. The other thing we've done is that we've hired ourselves an advisory council. And this advisory council is based on ethics. What we do is so important that we do not want to make a mistake of what could be seen as a very good solution for the now, that in 5, 10, 50 years from now, we made the very wrong decision because it was not inclusive, it was not tolerant. And we need to have that conscience to provide a soulfulness to our industry. And we feel that by having an ethics council, that provides us a way of starting to use our tools like digital twins in a more meaningful way.
You see, Paul, I reacted saying, yeah, that's, and you also said that this type of thought process can take food out of people's tables. But now, think about it. Firms like ours, for example, and the industry, you've also been, you're there and was there. The only word or term where our space is not construction and engineering, it's smart. Okay, so as long as we are doing something with construction, whether we're making smart buildings or we're making buildings smarter, we'll always have business. So it doesn't need to be new construction. So it can be making the old ones smarter. That's okay. Anyway, so we've overshot our time by such time. I mean, we carry on. But someone says, Paul, amazing mind, humble and awesome articulation. Sanirban, he is the CEO of Penetration Analytics out of Connecticut. So,
thank you.
And Paul, really, really thank you from me and everyone at present here and at Technostruck for agreeing to do this. And it's been lovely on both fronts, catching up and this session. So
excellent. Well, thank you, Roy, and thank you for everyone that stayed around to hear this. And just much success to everyone. We are in an amazing time, and as we are slowly climbing out of this global pandemic, I hope that you do take the time to think a little bit more strategically, and just hug your family and loved ones a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you so much, Paul. Have a nice. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.